United America Network presents Rank and File, the voice of labor for Riverside County, California. Your host is Steve Matthews. Here, the Rank and File speak out on jobs, justice, and dignity at work. Now, here's Steve.
Hello, I'm Steve Matthews. I am the host of Rank and File. This is a podcast where we go from solidarity to strategy. Today we have as our guest speaker, Robert Foster. Robert Foster is an accomplished lecturer. He's the elected vice president of the prestigious Lincoln Group of Boston, which are folks that are mainly college professors at Harvard, Yale, and large universities. He has a 20-year history as a union steward at the Riverworks GE plant in Lynn, Massachusetts, as well as he's a famous lecturer. He is an author of Blue is Just a Word, and he's clearly someone that's self-taught. I guess his mother was a history professor, a teacher, I should say, and he has taken up that mantle of being self-taught in a way that helps a lot of us to see what's important with our history. Today, we're going to be talking about Lincoln, and as a president, one of our most beloved presidents, and his connection with organized labor and workers. And I'd like to just kick it right to you, Bob, and to say, you're on. Let's dig into this and share what you know.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on your very first podcast. Not only are you my friend, but I consider you my brother. Somehow, it just feels right talking about American labor on what would have been Lincoln's 217th birthday, and doing so during Black History Month, and when we remember that Lincoln said everything of value in this world he learned from a woman, it makes it feel like the eyes of history are smiling upon us. My expertise is the politics of slavery from 1776 through 1865 and how they brought about the American Civil War. Intricately entwined in that story is how Lincoln felt about labor unions and the American worker. He was proud to be on record saying many things about them. Here are a few. Quote, labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration. The point he was emphasizing was that labor creates wealth and not the other way around, and should always be prioritized. He said numerous spun things too. Quote, I always thought the man that made the corn should eat the corn. End quote. To him, the struggle between capital and labor was part of what he called the eternal struggle between right and wrong since the beginning of time, describing it as the divine right of kings as opposed to the rights of common man. One system lets someone keep the fruits of your labor, and another lets you keep the fruits of your labor. The first being the essence of slavery, the latter the essence of freedom. He believed in the dignity of labor and the promise of America, saying, quote, if any man tells you he loves America, yet hates labor, he is a liar. If any man tells you he trusts America, yet fears labor, he is a fool. And most apropos, quote, all that serves labor serves the nation. All that harms labor is treason. There is no America without labor. And to rob one is to fleece the other. He told the nation by telling Congress in the bloody year of 1862 that for America to continue to exist, it must always ask itself how it can do better, and marching toward the perhaps never attainable standard maxim of equality for all. And that, again, like all men and women, whether yellow, black, white, brown, and red, be they of faith, a skeptic, an atheist, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, gay, straight, or somewhere in between are equally capable of goodness, kindness, cruelty, and bigotry, so we're all in this together. Never accused of being a religious man, he understood far better than most presidents what the word all meant. And that's how he knew that a labor union is the purest form of democracy. Because once the issue is voted on, it's all for one and one for all. In theory, anyway, while slaves had no right to vote or say whatsoever in their welfare. Being in a labor union makes it impossible to be enslaved. How, though, was it possible, Lincoln asked, when jumping back into politics in 1854, that the South could claim blacks were inferior and incapable of governing themselves when the Southern system was designed to never give them a fair and equal chance? It's why the South hated labor unions, because they embody freedom of choice. One of my favorite things about Lincoln is that in the 1830s, when he was in his 20s, he ended one of his very first political speeches by saying, "Now is the time to consider giving women the right to vote." This was an extremely dangerous thing to say for anyone back then with political ambitions, and could have easily destroyed the career of a lesser politician. And when you compare this to the ex-president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, saying 60 years later, just weeks before he died in 1889, that maybe it was good that the nation was back together. But what troubled him more than anything was giving women the right to vote would ruin everything. To his dying breath, Davis had no doubt that history would one day record him as the hero and Lincoln as the villain. To me, it reveals the true difference between the two systems. One that permitted slavery because it couldn't see reality for what it was, and the other that ended the insanity of it. Labor unions, like democracies, are made of people, so not always perfect. But when done correctly with the intent of our better angels, as Lincoln would say, they're one of the most powerful ways to keep us safe and leaning toward the good. It is no coincidence that when labor unions are at their strongest, voting and democracies are at their safest. The question is, who benefits by making voting harder, like some are doing today with the help of the Supreme Court? For Lincoln, it made things harder to vote, and that, in his opinion, only benefited slave owners. And we should never forget that in Lincoln's time, it was the Supreme Court Justice Roger Taney who announced in the dreaded Dred Scott decision that a black person could never become a citizen of the United States, and a black person had no rights a white person had to respect. Quite incredible. If we are the last best hope of Earth, as Lincoln said we are, keeping this information out of our children's history books is a crime against humanity and all future generations, especially the children. The idea that children should be protected from the truth is nonsense. I'd like to take a moment and say that line again. The idea that children should be protected from the truth is nonsense. Kids are resilient, and they deserve the truth more than anyone. Is lying to them better? How are they to deal with racism and bigotry when confronted with them if they're not taught the truth about them? It is no coincidence that where historical facts are denied, unions are at their weakest. And again, as Lincoln said of slavery and freedom, it's the struggle between right and wrong since the beginning of time. And unions give justice. a fair chance. The great thing about unions, Lincoln, and democracy is that he wanted us to know that strong labor unions are the direct result of a strong democracy, and that forces out to destroy democracy will always be with us. What history tells us in no uncertain terms is that democracies do not last when they're not honest about their past. Lincoln said we would always have the wise and foolish with us, which means there will always be those who will never want the truth. My beautiful little granddaughter reminded me not too long ago that, Pa, always remember, there will always be poops in the groove. I believe, like Lincoln did, that we are the last best hope of earth, precisely because we are strong enough to hold up the truth of our past for the whole world to see, which is the only way to see the truth of our present. That's a line that has to be said again. It's the only way to understand our present, by understanding the past. When we tell the truth of our past, we prove it, that we are that hope. If we do this, others will follow. If not, who the heck will? Yeah. Lincoln wanted us to know that when we're honest about our past, by being honest with ourselves, quote, the world will forever call us blessed. On a personal note, when my book came out, here it is in case anyone's interested. Curtis Media and Publishers Weekly said, quote, slavery is all around us, and the author is fervent about fighting it in all its manifestations, end quote. What Practice What meant was, my story was not just about the horrors of slavery, but about the mind of a nation being enslaved and brainwashed by false information, which allowed slavery to happen in the first place. It was also a love story about losing my brother and then my wife when they became enslaved by cancer, and how Lincoln said slavery was a cancer hidden deep within the Constitution. To have Curtis said, I am, quote, one of the most passionate writers readers will likely find between the two covers of a book, end quote, is something I never expected or was looking for. I simply told the truth. I simply told the story of how history saved me and can save anyone if they let it. All you have to do is listen. Now, I don't think being passionate means I'm right about a damn thing. But it must mean I'm trying, sometimes desperately, to help a nation I love. Finally, when Lincoln was campaigning in Boston in 1862, he became aware of the great Lynn shoe strike, which was a huge affair because Lynn was one of the biggest shoe manufacturers in the world. He said he liked the system of labor unions where a workman who was abused could put down his tools and walk away, whereas a slave in the South had no such recourse. And if I have time, I'd like to tell you why I became what inspired me to become union steward at General Electric.
Yes, go ahead.
When I returned from England, I was a musician on Charisma Records in England, and I returned to attend my brother's funeral. And afterwards, we were scheduled to go back. And my wife came down with cancer, and I had to stay home and ride the next 2 years out until she passed away. So my dad, who was a manager at General Electric, and his father, my grandfather, my hero, Abe, was a executive board member on the union. So I got a good glimpse of both sides. But my dad got me in as an entry-level job I mowed lawns for General Electric. Then I got a forklift job. And eventually, because of the union offering classes, mathematics classes, I moved up and had, for the last 11 years of my career, had the highest paying inspection job of inspecting jet engines. So I was very fortunate because of the benefits of a union. And union pay helped the struggling father raise his daughter. So one day, as a forklift driver, I was riding through a long building, and I was on the forklift, and I saw signs all over the place. Equal pay for equal work. We want equality. On this side of the aisle were women, all women, no men. And on this side were men. They were all working the same machines, the lathes, I believe they were, and making the same parts. The women made just as many good parts as the men. There was no difference. So I asked what the signs were all about. And I was told by my boss, who I happen to be a friend with, I'm one of those irritating people that can get along with management, but I never let an opportunity to let them know what I'm thinking. But they're doing the same exact thing. How can they think? And my boss's answer was, without flinching, it's because they're women. As if I didn't get it. I just happen to have, as Steve mentioned, a history teacher for our mother who was my hero. And I signed up, and I was with the union from then on, and I never looked back. And that's why, one of the many reasons why I became a union steward, and I just wanted to share that with you.
So I'd like to go back to you are in Lynn, Mass, where there was the great shoe strike. And I think that people, when they look at a strike situation like in Lynn, and in the bitter winter when the strike took place, it didn't affect just Lynn, but the surrounding whole area where the leather workers, where the machines were made. And in the middle of all of that, Lincoln took his time to send a message to Lynn workers. Are you aware of what that message was?
I believe it's part of what I said, where I was actually paraphrasing a little bit, but he let them know why he was in favor of the system of labor and why he was supporting them. And one of the reasons is because it was the opposite of slavery. He believed in the system. Am I correct on that? I believe I am.
So within the next year or two, when the Civil War broke out, it's probably not a surprise to people that people that were supported by Lincoln signed up in huge numbers to go and fight for the country, to fight for the Union. I guess in Lynn, it's something like 17% of men signed up to fight when Lincoln made the call. So when we're talking about Lincoln and labor, there's a connection first to that he was in favor of labor, then the fact that people who were laborers answered the call.
Yes.
So do you have anything else you'd like to add before we end?
No. Free labor versus slavery. That was the issue. And slavery is what caused the American Civil War. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But if you don't have any more questions, I think we could end it if you'd like. And I hope you like what I had to say.
Absolutely. I appreciate your passion for the truth. Thank you, Bob.
Rank and File is a production of the United American Network. This program is available from UnitedAmericanNetwork.com, and distribution partners include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Captivate.fm, and YouTube. Join us again next week for another episode discussing important labor issues from Riverside County, California.
Rank and File.